It could be argued that every day is a big news day because there's always something happening somewhere in the world. But I think yesterday, the 9th of September 2025, was particularly busy. There seemed to be a lot of things going on at once, um, quite dramatic things in different parts of the world. So I'm just going to go through them because it's unlikely that I'm going to be making a video about each of these stories, particularly with the way the news cycle is. Undoubtedly, something else will come up that will be worth making a video about. So I'm going to kind of condense them into one video. But like I say, most days could be seen as newsworthy. I just want to cover some of these things. So this is today's papers. Some of today's papers. The Eye. Of course, this is the 10th of September, covering events of yesterday, covering yesterday's news. The Metro. And a local paper here in Sunderland, the Sunderland Echo. And I'll just start with this story. That's one of our local MPs, Bridget Phillipson, and she's put her name forward for this Deputy Prime Minister election. When Angela Rayner stepped down, apparently she said that the Deputy Prime Minister has to be a woman. I've mixed views on that. I think it should be meritocracy, but I understand why Labour is pushing that because they've never had a full-time woman leader. Harriet Harman was briefly interim leader, but they've never had a full-time woman leader, and they've always felt kind of that was an embarrassing point compared to the Tories having three women leaders. So I'm sure this is a way to sort of look at. I think the next Labour leader will probably be a woman. Bridget Phillipson strikes me as ambitious. I actually met her a few months ago. Not really long enough to form a fair viewpoint, but she came to our local Ukrainian event, which I'm very involved in. Although she's not my MP, she's one of the Sunderland MPs, and she spoke about the government support, and she said some words of to boost morale, to talk about support, and she was also talking individually about what help the government could give. Although she did point out that people should contact the local MP. We have a rule in this country whereby a lot of constituency issues can only be addressed. Well, constituency issues can only be addressed by the MPs of that constituency. My local MP is Lewis Atkinson, also Labour, and he's also supported our Ukrainian group. He was at another event. But I think sometimes I remember writing to the Liberal Democrats and they asked was I a constituent, because I was trying to ascertain the Liberal Democrat position on non-crime hate incidents. I made the point I'm not a constituent, but I'm writing to you in your capacity as the spokesperson of the party. So I think parliamentarians should be flexible in that regard. Anyway, the next Deputy Prime Minister could be a Sunderland MP, so that will be quite a big thing here. Tony Blair's old constituency, Sedgefield, wasn't too far from here, though Blair himself was born in Edinburgh. Also, and this is surprising, Anthony Eden was born in this part of the country. He was born in County Durham. But, most people would be surprised to hear that he was from the northeast because he always had that sort of home counties type accent. Anyway, so that's kind of local British news. Now, in France and Japan, the governments have collapsed. Macron has seen, I believe, his fourth prime minister in just over a year. Francois Bayrou's government has collapsed. And he's been replaced by a guy who's 39 years old. Again, a little bit older than Gabriel Attal, but still only 39. A year younger than me, and we're seeing, leaders now. That's a bit of a strange thing for me at 40, although I'm still young. It's I'll try and get the guy's name. Actually, I should get this up. See if it's in the paper. Bear with me. So yeah, in the case of Japan, also premier changing is not overly unusual. It happens often in Japan, in Japanese politics. Shigeru Ishiba has lasted less than a year. There were a few exceptions. Another country that tends to change premier a lot is Italy, although Giorgia Meloni has now been in power for over 3 years, which by Italian standards is actually quite long. Yeah, here we go. Sébastien Lecornu is France's new Prime Minister, and he's only 39. So, Japan, France, Italy tend to change Premier a lot. Well, some very dramatic things going on in the world. Yes, so Nepal. Nepal is in a state of crisis. Now, I haven't looked at this story in detail, and I'm going to subsequently. I may or may not make a video on it. But a lot of the situation in Nepal with politics, I know, is to do with the those who want to restore the monarchy. Back in 2001, there was a regicide of the entire royal family carried out by, I believe, a crown prince. It was a shocking incident. And that country also went through a very costly civil war, as all civil wars are. But this has been called a Generation Z protest, and between 19 and 21 people were killed on the streets. The presidential palace was set on fire, ministers' homes were burned. I think it has echoes of the Bangladesh crisis of last year, and it's a very serious situation. Or it also looks like the Sri Lanka crisis of 2022. But like I say, I haven't followed it in detail, but clearly a pretty serious situation with people killed on the streets. The Middle East crisis has escalated. Israel has now attacked Qatar. And it's no secret that Hamas has foundations in Qatar. Some of their leaders are based there. Nevertheless, it is a sovereign state, and I question the wisdom of opening up yet another front. As it stands, in the last 2 years, Israel has attacked Syria, Iran, Qatar, and Yemen. And so you wonder how many other countries is it going to open up a front on. Even Donald Trump has criticised this, although Trump was well aware of what they were going to do. I don't know how accurate casualty reports are, but I've heard 6 people were killed. In Jerusalem, there were 6 people killed in a terrorist attack. Israel may argue there's a moral justification because Hamas is based in Qatar, but I just question even leaving aside the morality of it, the wisdom of opening up another front, especially with a wealthy Gulf state. It's the Qataris are going to be furious about the attack on their sovereignty, and it's been roundly condemned even by Israel's biggest backer. I just think Netanyahu is incredibly reckless, and I honestly think without American support they would not be able to be doing this. I've always said Israel has a right to defend itself, but this reeks of acting with impunity. Qatar is a sovereign state, and I just think that what Netanyahu is doing is extremely reckless. It's also the moral side of what's going on in Gaza is an abomination, an absolute abomination, and every single day we see more atrocities. Yesterday saw yet another massacre in Ukraine. Pensioners waiting in queue to receive their pensions were killed in a Russian strike. Up to 26 killed. This came after Zelensky said that invited Putin to come to Kyiv rather than he go to Moscow. Now, of course, Putin's not going to do that because Putin's a card. Fundamentally, I do believe all dictators are cardly. And some people might question that. They might say, well, they're enormously powerful and they're taking on this responsibility of that huge power, so how can it be cardly? It is cardly in the sense that dictators never want to look at the damage they cause. Stalin never visited the victims of Holodomor. Hitler apparently was queasy about visiting the death camps. Chairman Mao, Mao may have been different. Actually, Mao did have a bit of bloodlust himself, but I'm not sure if he saw the aftermath of Red Guard murders, And likewise, Putin is not going to go to Kyiv, I should say, because he doesn't want to see his crimes. He's fully aware of them. He's an arrogant war criminal, but he won't go there. They might argue security, but what about Zelensky's security in Moscow? So, Putin is a card, and he's not going to see the damage he's caused. Um, the DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo, saw an awful atrocity, 61 people killed. But unfortunately, it's one of those things that just doesn't get mainstream attention. I've mentioned this before. I mentioned regarding the Sudan landslide, um, and there are reasons for it. Sometimes there is difficulty with outside journalists getting access, and that's also true of the DRC. But these sort of atrocities happen all the time in that part of the world. This is a particularly big one, 61 killed. But it's the same in Nigeria. Yet another attack in northern Nigeria, 55 killed. And often it's dismissed as a bandit conflict. What we're really seeing is targeted persecution of Christians. It's a very serious problem. So a lot of this stuff happened yesterday. One day in the world. Just going to look briefly at the world map. See, I'm sure there's a lot of other things that have happened. I know Robert Kennedy faced a grilling. That was a few days before by Bernie Sanders and Senator Warner and others. But technically that wasn't the 9th of September. So I'm sure something else will come to me. Yesterday just was a very eventful news day. I'm sure there was good news as well, but like I've said before, bad news just tends to attract more. It just tends to get editors' attention more. That's the nature of the news cycle. But it just shows the world we're living in. 8.2 billion people in the world today. It's pretty much impossible for an editor to cover every single thing in the proportion that it deserves. I do think sometimes I do question editorial decisions to cover certain things over others. And it does kind of annoy me the way the BBC will say, join us again and we're covering this, and then they go on to another report before covering the thing that they've said they would cover. Yeah. I'm just thinking, is there anything else from yesterday? Probably. Let me see. I'll go to the iNewspaper is very good at doing panoramas of world news, so I'll just briefly cover this in case I've missed anything. Of course I've missed things that won't be possible to cover everything. Let's see. So this is the way they sort of do this panorama feature. Right, I'll read out some of the more unusual things or things that I haven't mentioned so far. Thailand, former PM to serve 1-year prison term. Jintamas Saksonchai in Bangkok. The Supreme Court said former Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra must serve a 1-year prison term for previous convictions for graft and abuse of power after investigating whether officials had mishandled his return to Thailand in 2023. The Shinawatra family, of course, are very tied up in corruption and support and counter support. It covers here the Nepal Crisis. Let's see, nothing particularly there that I'm going to cover. Indonesia has also seen violent protests on the streets. So, when we look around the world and we look at some of the things happening, for people to say that this country is on the brink of civil war, absolute nonsense. We have problems in Britain, but they're small compared to the problems that other countries face. That's the reality. So anyone who's going around saying that the UK is on the brink of civil war they're being disingenuous or they're being very ignorant. It's not about to happen. Just isn't. Okay, I'll wrap it up there, but the 9th of September 2025, another chaotic day in our chaotic world.